Qiqi was never too good at remembering, but she's trying as hard as she can. She remembers Yao Yao, of course, as she lived in the harbor with her. She barely remembers the others, faint hints of a girl in white, almost cat-like in nature, from the city of Wind, or maybe she was a cat, and Qiqi's just imagining things. There's a fuzzy memory of meeting an older girl, one who spent most of her time sleeping, and brought with her the faint scent of lightning. Qiqi has stayed with her the longest, and after Yao Yao stopped showing up to play, Qiqi was still small enough to pick flowers with her. They would meet at Stone Gate, and Qiqi would trade Cecilia's for a handful of silk flowers, and wouldn't mind if Qiqi forgot and showed up late. She remembered Qiqi as being one of her best friends, as she had spent most of her time with her, and would always bring joy whenever she was feeling sad. They had small fights regarding Qiqi's enjoyment for destruction and accidentally blowing up stuff, and Qiqi's desperate attempts at healing it again, but they both always made up in the end, and would meet the next day. She remembers Baizu, with his warm smiles and his herbs. He liked to crouch down to Qiqi's level, take her small hand in his larger one, and give her a seed. Baizu would tap the seed, and its leaves would unfurl, slowly, beautifully. His eyes would crinkle, and she would run off to place the new plant into the dirt. She remembers Xiao, and sitting on the roof of Wangshuan, curled up in his lap, as he lulled her to sleep, with the soft tones of his flute. She remembers his almost prideful smile, as he steps forward to swiftly end a hilichurl. It had been spring, she thinks, and they had been on a walk. They had come across a camp of hilichurls, and Xiao had swiftly ended all but one. It managed to dodge his attacks, and approached him from behind, but Qiqi had stopped it. Then they both happily defeat all the hilichurls together, and go back to their normal walk. She remembers him being very protective every time they would hang out together. Qiqi remembers Zhongli. She remembers the first time he held out a teacup towards her, or maybe the second time, or maybe the 12th. Every week, she'd run up to the terrace where Madame Ping sat, and she would climb onto a chair next to Zhongli, and she'd listen to the old friends talk. Qiqi never really understood what they were talking about, but their fulfilled and happy expressions always brought a smile into her face, making that terrace be one of her favorite places to visit whenever she's remembering. She doesn't remember the interesting man's name, but she remembers his entrance and exit from the harbor, his flaming orange hair, his fake smiles, and his real ones. She remembers the way he looked walking out of Liwei that day, after he had released Osial, after the traveler had fought and stopped him, after Zhongli made a contract and gave up his gnosis. He had looked empty. Qiqi thought about him from time to time, and wondered if he had found his way again. She also wondered that if the traveler wasn't there, would she be able to defeat him in combat and protect her beloved nation. Qiqi remembers Hu Tao, remembers how she was so energetic, so warm. She sadly only remembers hatred when she thinks of the girl, but can't exactly point out the reason why. Was it her looks, her personality, or maybe she did something terrible to her? Who knows? Mostly though, she remembers the traveler who played with her for so long and seemed to care so much. She remembers the time she asked for cocoa goat milk, and how they tried so hard to get it for her, only to be laughed at by the orange hair man. She remembers on how they saved her city, how they kept coming back. They were very consistent, and would bring her gifts from the nations they visited. She still had the dress from Inazuma, the big journal and dictionary from Sumeru, and the little metal bird from Fonting, and although it's rusted and doesn't move anymore, it's one of her greatest treasures. Qiqi smiles at the memories, tearing up a bit as she thinks about all of her friends and the little things they did together. She hasn't cried in centuries, nor has she remembered this much information. Perhaps it's something about the setting, because the summit of Mount Tianheng at sunset seems nearly magical, or was this some sort of blessing given by a god? I wish they could see this, Qiqi thinks, but then she remembers the last crucial details. She remembers that Yao Yao grew up, and that Qiqi never knew, until one day she saw an old woman paraded through the streets, looking quite peaceful, and noticed the small pairs of bells by her side. She then suddenly remembers that although Qiqi stayed, even her species left eventually. She remembers the day that the girl stood up in the middle of the field they were in, looked up at the sky with wonder, and smiled. "It's time, Qiqi," she said slowly, and even though she only looked like a middle-aged woman, but she suddenly sounded like a 1,000-year-old god. She remembers Qiqi, glowing brighter and brighter, until it hurt to look. When it was over, all that was left was Dodoko, in a masterless pyrovision. She now keeps both the objects, alongside the metal bird, and other multiple stuff from her friends, in her special box. Qiqi remembers that Baizu didn't come back to the pharmacy one day, but she still waited for him to arrive. She would sit there and wait for hours, days, months, and years, but he never arrived. She remembers that Xiao's karma eventually got the better of him. She remembered rumors of his eliminated body, and remembered that when she last visited him, he was unusually terrified, and refused to go in their usual walk around the city. Qiqi just accepted and left, a decision that she now regrets. She remembers that Zhongli got weaker by the day, and how his chats with Madame Ping slowly turned into soft whispers. She could only catch the word erosion repeated over and over again. She remembers Hu Tao's final trip to the border, and remembers her send-off being one of the grandest the parlor had ever conducted. She thought that she only had hatred for the girl, but then why did she feel sad thinking about it? She remembers the traveler finding their sibling. She was very excited after hearing the news, but then she remembers them leaving in their last goodbye. She watched as they went over to another world, leaving Tevat. Her tears spill over as she remembers. She's old and tired. Qiqi has lived for over 10,000 years. She's seen the rise and fall of Liyue Harbor, the ending of Rex Lapis, and the rising of a new god. She's watched the landscape change 100 times, but through it all, she's still stuck in her body. She's sobbing now, on her knees, and sobbing because she'd nearly forgotten everything that she treasured in her life. She's scared that she'll forget again, and she makes a vow to never forget. As she continues to cry, Albedo suddenly arrives. He was going to paint a beautiful scenery when he saw a small girl crying, and tries to comfort her. He remembered her as the girl that Qiqi used to play with, and asks what's wrong. After looking at her and remembering her predicament, he instantly realizes what is happening, and just responds with, "I see." He stood together with her, looking at the beautiful scenery, as they both reminisce about everything they had been through, from the friends they had made, from the interesting people they have met, everything. The sun continues in its path throughout the sky, and as a little girl and synthetic human cries on top of a mountain, another day is born. The end. This fanfic is not written by me, but instead by this wonderful person, so make sure to check them out and give support. Thank you all so much for watching. Subscribe and like if you ended up enjoying this video. Bye.